Hello, and welcome to the Detroit Way podcast, a Detroit sports podcast. I'm your host, Chad Marriott, and today we're going to be talking about the Tigers and the Lions. So, the Tigers have been having like this big up and down, back and forth, like they were really bad. We all overreacted, and they were really good, and we all overreacted, and then they went through another little blip, and most of all, they're winning the series. They're keeping the lead. The questions come to, is this sustainable and how's this going to look in the playoffs? So, a trend to look back at the trade deadline for is the bullpen in the month of August was the second best in Major League Baseball with a 2.98 ERA. The two big additions, Kyle Finnegan has pitched 14 and one-third innings, given up 3 hits, 0 runs, with 19 strikeouts and 3 walks. For all the panic about the deadline, that has turned out to be a brilliant move. They were like, we got to get the closer guy. And we got him. It's been fantastic. It's probably one of the more underrated things that Scott Harris has done since coming to Detroit. And then one that got panned. Even I was like, I don't know what this is about. Was Rafael Montero. In his last 7 innings, he's given up 0 hits, 0 runs, has 8 strikeouts and 3 walks. That's looking pretty good too, and that one looks like a steal. And then they moved Troy Melton to the bullpen, and I still think that, and we'll get to the starters in a minute, that they probably should have kept him as a starter, but having him in the bullpen has turned out to be a big-time change for the team, big-time difference. In the 7 games since moving to the bullpen, including some games where he did like the short opener starts, where it was like 3 innings, I think he did one. He has 17 and a third innings, 2 runs, 13 Ks, and 3 walks. So if you figure bolster your bullpen, you had those 3 guys all playing really well. That's not bad for some adjustments to a bullpen that was struggling in July. And they still have the possibility of a few other players coming back and pitching for them. Paul Sewald. And we'll see with the Alex Cobb and Jose Urquidy. I probably didn't pronounce that right. But on top of that, you have Hannafy. In his last 16 and 2/3 has only given up 4 runs. And I think 11 strikeouts and 3 walks. So he's been pretty good. The question comes with Holton has kind of struggled this year. And it would be really big for this team if he could turn it around. I still feel like he will because the stuff is there. But it's been up and down. In his last 12 and 2/3, he's given up 8 runs, 6 walks, and 6 hits. So that's going to be a big difference. Vest has also been literally hit or miss. With 13 Ks and 13 hits in his last 12 outings. So, but I feel like the sample size with him between last year and this year, I feel like this is just a little waiver, and that he's gonna be fine as we go into the postseason. And then you have Tommy Kahnle, which this has been really interesting that he was so bad, but his last 4 1/3, he hasn't given up a run. Only 1 walk, but 5 hits. No, sorry, 5 strikeouts. Apologies. So that would be massive if Tommy Kahnle can go back to. It doesn't have to be that dominance he had like in May, but if he could come back to being like a 6th, 7th inning, high leverage player again, and then Vest kind of and Holton, these are a lot of ifs, but if those 3 kind of return to form and you have this Finnegan, Montero, Melton mix with Hannafy, you have a really, really good bullpen. going into the postseason. And then Chase Lee is coming back, and if we get the best version of Chase Lee from his rookie year, you knew eventually he was going to get hit. Maybe made some adjustments. And then Sawyer Gipson-Long. Now I don't know if he's coming back up to do a spot start or if he's coming back up to finish the year. I mean, that's another guy that could eat some innings. If he plays like he did 2 years ago, it's hard to gauge what he's going to be. But if they're bringing him back up, they must feel pretty confident. And then I wouldn't count out a Brant Hurter return. I'm not sure about the details of his injury. That'd be curious to know because he can be pretty good as well. I think the Drew Summers experience, I think that's probably over. I mean, we're getting to September and a pennant chase and, getting ready for the postseason. I think you need to probably shape this up to look like what it's going to look like in October. So all in all, the bullpen's been great. So why do we feel like we're giving up a lot of runs? Well, I would say the up and downs of the Tigers have to do with the up and downs of the starting rotation. So let's look at another deadline acquisition, Charlie Morton. You could take 3 of his outings in which he went 6 innings or more and gave up 2 or less runs. So he had 18 innings and gave up 3 runs. That's in 3 games. In the other 3, he gave up 5 or more runs. So 13 innings, 12 runs. So if you're looking at the Tigers, you're like, they're so great for a little bit. And then, they're so awful for a little bit. Well, that is almost like literally, that's it right there, the starting pitching. Because if we go to Paddock, he has 3 outings of 1 run. So he has 16 2/3 innings where he gave up a total of 3 runs. That's in 3 outings. His other 3 outings, he went 13 1/3 and gave up 15 runs. So again, big high, big winning streak, big highs, big losing streak, big lows. What is that? You look at those 2, they're 6 outings split. There's, so 12 games they've started. 6 of them are great. 6 of them are horrible. I mean, not like out. It's just like one or the other. And then we go to Casey Mize, and this is going to be a big difference for how this team does in the playoffs. As you look at Casey Mize in his last 8 starts, the team is 5-3. He's 3-3. He has a 7.2 ERA, and in that time, his ERA has jumped from 2.63 to 3.95. It was massive, especially with Flaherty's struggles this year, and then you have the injury to Jackson Jobe. Alex Cobb never comes around. So you're looking at this team. Casey Mize is an all-star. It was huge to their first half success. Other than his first start, I think in July, when he went 7 innings, gave up 0 runs. Since then, he has not played super well. There's been some decent outings in there, but there's obviously been some struggles. And I've heard some people talking about that his expected results didn't match his real results. I don't know, analytics and whatnot, but that is also another part of their second half struggles, like where they fall down. And then we have Flaherty, who I thought was coming around. This has been the roller coaster experience of all roller coaster experiences this year. In July, Flaherty had a 3.55 ERA, which if you're saying that this season he was I think he was expected to be your number 2, but I think he's kind of ended up being like the 3 or the 4 guy in the rotation. A 3.55 for a 3rd or 4th man in a rotation is not bad. That in August has jumped up to 4.66, and that seems a little deceiving because you're like 4.66. He's had a couple of gems in August. He did. He had a couple of really strong outings, and then he had a few disastrous ones. So I don't know if you get the best version of Jack Flaherty, because I almost want to weigh this. would you rather risk the gem to bad outing ratio of August so that maybe he has some of those gems in the playoffs? Or would you just rather have like the average from July where he's playing pretty well but not throwing these great games, but good games? I don't know. I guess if the way they're scoring runs, I guess I would take the July. And maybe he goes 6, gives up 3, you got to score 4 at it. Versus he could give you a 7-inning shutout or 3 innings, 8 runs. Because in the playoffs, you're pretty much out of that game. Teams are too good and too locked in at that point. But one of the things I wanted to point out with the pitching, is the league average for runs scored this year per game is 4.26. And the Tigers went 16-12 in August, and they scored 5 or more 15 times. And they allowed 5 or more 14 times. So they're actually, based on, like, if you're using that as kind of like a line to judge wins and losses or how many they should win, how many they should lose, they're actually playing a little bit above that. Which I think reinforces the point that I'm trying to make with all this, is the starting pitching has to be better if they want to succeed in the playoffs. And I know there's probably a lot of angst about that with Scott Harris. If you could criticize one thing that he's done, I think people criticize a lot of things that he's done, which is, I think, really unfair. Because the bullpen, there was a lot of complaints about the bullpen, and it with all the injuries and who you expected to be in this bullpen at this point, and things that have gone awry that you couldn't have predicted. The Tommy Kahnle thing, couldn't have predicted that. You can say for the starting pitching, though, you could say that the Kenta Maeda, that was a bad signing. Alex Cobb, it's a bad signing. I know it's not necessarily his fault, but the injury history and how this has turned out, it's not been good. But Reese Olson and Jackson Jobe, those injuries, so you had 3 guys you expected to be starters and that are just out for the year. Jack Flaherty, nobody can blame him for how that has gone, because everybody, if you look back, your tweets, your posts, your whatever, everybody was ecstatic about getting Jack Flaherty back. So there you're looking at a number of different things. And then you could say, at the deadline you got Charlie Morton and Chris Paddock, who have had the highs and lows of all highs and lows. Who is he going to get at that deadline? Deadlines are tricky, I think, things to avoid, because it's very easy to give up too much for a short-term gain. And unless you win the World Series, it's not even remotely worth it. So I think protecting this farm system was worth it. We're going to see how this pans out. And the same thing, you couldn't have predicted Casey Mize would have an all-star first half and revert back to some serious struggles in the second half. I'm not trying to cover for the guy, but I don't know what you do with that amount of injuries and this amount of unpredictability. I think we could look back at this Tigers season the way we looked at last year's Lions season, where, if all these guys hadn't have been hurt, you never know, which is one of the sucky but true things about sports. You have to have depth. And we thought that this organization had really good starting pitching depth. But even a guy like Cater Montero came up and didn't really see the growth that you needed. And Sawyer Gipson-Long came up for a stint this year, and coming off that injury, we knew it was going to be tough. So we'll see. He's getting another chance. Hopefully that pans out. And then you finally had a guy like Troy Melton, and they moved him to the bullpen. I think long term, I hope he's a starter, because looking at what this team has, I think they're going to need him to be a starter long term. So let's wrap that up on the Tigers. I still feel pretty confident. that every other start for Morton and Paddock is going to be decent, and the other one's going to be atrocious. If they can level out, if Mize can level out, if Flaherty can level out, that's a lot of ifs. Realistically, though, if of those four, because Scooble, of those four, if you could get two of them to play a little bit more consistently with this bullpen and the options they have, I'm actually not opposed to bringing back pitching chaos with some of these guys, especially the day after Scooble pitches. Even in the playoffs, if you have Scooble, the next day you could have like a bullpen day, and with the rest days built into the playoffs, I think it's totally possible they could rely on this bullpen to avoid even like a Chris Paddock start. All right, so let's look at the Lions. Season preview, I guess, in a way. I think I'm not going to predict a record. I think the gambling odds say 10.5 is the betting line. I would bet they're going to win more than that. The amount of disrespect to a team that was 15-2 last year, that is largely running it back, some minor improvements. I think the depth is better, and they're healthy, healthy-ish, and they're going to get healthier, I believe, as the year goes on. You never know. But it just seems like they didn't do something big and sexy and headline grabbing, so everybody's throwing them down the line. And I know, like, sometimes I'm critical of Jared Goff, but Jared Goff is consistent and he's not flashy. He doesn't win games with his arm, but he makes the smart plays. He doesn't lose games. He is, I don't know why this is a dirty word. Game manager is not bad. There are a lot of really talented guys that don't know how to manage a game, and they never win anything that means anything. So, with his talent combined with the IQ, the game management skills, I feel like that doesn't draw as much attention as somebody that runs a lot, scrambles a lot, or slings the ball. So I think that it's going to be good for them to get that instead of front runner. I don't know if they were as comfortable with that image. And being the underdog again this year, I think the Lions are going to somehow, after being 15-2, still shock everybody. Which seems stupid. Looking at the division, I've seen people say that they're going to finish third. I think they're going to win the division. I think it's possible they go 6-0. And as far as like how I would rank how much each team in the division scares me, this could be a hot take. I don't know. I think the Vikings scare me the most because they have the infrastructure. They have, I think, the next best head coach in the division. And maybe it's because I watched J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. But he is the quarterback, the prototype for the quarterback the Lions defense has struggled against the last few years. Scrambler, a guy that can extend plays with his legs, but he also has a strong arm. I know there's a lot of people hating on him. I don't know why. Maybe because he went to Michigan. But he really scares me that he's going to be in this division for a long time. Maybe someday I'll end up on freezing cold takes for that, but I think that this is probably going to suck, having to play against him twice a year. But to look at the next one, I have the Bears is the team that worries me the next most. Why? Why do they scare me more than the Packers? I think the Packers are probably a better team. They're probably a better team than both of those teams. But the quarterback type, Jordan Love is the type of quarterback the Lions play well against the defense, the way they're set up. Caleb Williams is another one of those quarterbacks that they struggle against. Now, it's a smaller sample size, but in 6 games against Jordan Love against the Lions, he is 2-4, averaged 187 yards per game, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. In 2 games, Caleb Williams is 0-2, but averaged 295 yards, had 5 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And that, to me, goes to Love is, has some mobility, but he's more of a traditional pocket passer. Going to move around, going to use that mobility to get around in the pocket, to throw the ball. And that Caleb Williams is going to just cause problems with the way that he's mobile. So they worry me more. And then with Ben Johnson taking over, can really utilize that mobility. We'll see how that works out. But that's why I would rank it that way. It could be after watching 2 weeks of J.J. McCarthy play that I rearranged that order, but right now he makes me super nervous, especially with the weapons that they have in Minnesota. Looking at their schedule, it's a tough schedule. I get that. But the 3 games that I would say are the toughest are the Ravens, the Commanders, and the Eagles. So going back to that conversation about the division, what's the thing we notice about all those quarterbacks? They're mobile, they can move, they can cause you problems. And then, of course, Philadelphia is kind of in a similar situation to Detroit, except for it's even more egregious because they just won the Super Bowl. There's no reason why they shouldn't be the favorites to repeat as NFC champions. And I'm a Lions fan saying that. I think it's ridiculous that because they didn't make any big headline splashing changes, they're just running it back with, the Super Bowl team that beat the brakes off of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that should be enough to have them be at the top. I think the 3 must-wins are, sorry, Cleveland, the Browns, sorry, New York, sorry, the Giants, and then the Steelers. I kind of teetered on that with the Cowboys because I think that could be like your 3A or 3B, because those are the 4, I think, most winnable, kind of must-win games. And some people are probably wondering, you think that about the Cowboys? I've always thought that about the Cowboys. I was 2 years old the last time that they were relevant in the NFL in a serious way, even though the media makes them relevant every year because they're the Cowboys. Yeah, I don't care. I think that they're on track to like completely fall off the rails. And in a similar thing, I think this is crazy. Why are the Chiefs not on there? The Lions, I think because of the safety play, but they match up really well with Kansas City. And I think Kansas City is kind of on a track for, this is like their last hurrah with this group before, I'm not saying rebuild, but they're going to have to go through a massive retooling and to figure things out after this season. I think this is the last year where it's like they can ride this current train. And you saw that even in New England when they were a dynasty. They had like a phase where they had to like kind of duck under to come back up. And I think they're kind of hitting that mark this year, where that could go one of 2 ways. They're like, this is it, let's last dance this thing, and they win a Super Bowl, or it could go the other way where the wheels come off and Patrick Mahomes is talking about needing more weapons because they really have done the New England thing where they're like, oh, you want more money? Bye. We have Patrick Mahomes. But at some point it comes down to how much of a beating, how much of the playmaking do you want to leave on one guy? Even though he's the best player in the league, at some point you have to put some system around him. And as far as how they've drafted other wide receivers in recent years, how they've done on that front or added, it's not been great. All right. So, what are the Lions' strengths this year? The offense, the weapons, the coaching, the safeties, and the run defense, like that interior line. I think they're going to be great on that. A lot of the things that were good last year are going to be good this year. 15-2 team. I don't want to call them weaknesses. I want to call them questions. This one's been talked to death, and usually when there's like a talking point like this with a team, like with the Pistons, it's always 3-point shooting. I think that's stupid. The Tigers are like, we need another bat. No, we don't. Offense is great. This is one where it's been repeated and repeated and repeated, and I tend to agree. The edge rush, the pass rush, makes me really nervous that they didn't go add somebody. Even like somebody that they're like, oh, this could turn out and have this great potential. With relying on Marcus Davenport, who were, that health thing. Let's hope. The DBs, the corners, really. How is that going to be? Is Terrion Arnold ready to take that next step? I think Reed is going to be good. Robertson, and then the depth with Dorsey and Rakyasin. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. I got to see it on the field. And those two things are intertwined because they make each other look good. Good corner play gives the pass rush more time. A good pass rush makes it so the secondary doesn't have to play so long. So I gotta hope that they're improved in one or the other because they'll go together. But I tend to believe that the pass rush is going to make the biggest difference, and we'll see. I mean, the biggest thing this year, based after last year, is depth. Is the depth there? Because this is football, and even though last year was kind of absurd in the amount of injuries, and I don't expect a repeat of that, but let's all knock on wood for that. But something's going to happen, so they need to know. I knocked, so dog's freaking out. But we need to know that they have the depth to play through that. And I'd like to talk about the Pistons and Malik Beasley to wrap up, but I just don't know enough. I have no idea what's happening. So, is the gambling thing? Is it not? Is it all crap? Be careful. It's that time of year where the NBA is so slow that there's a bunch of not even in the realm of reality mock trade articles floating around. So be careful. Don't get tricked. Don't get sucked in. They're trying to make you angry so you engage. Be careful about that. All right. Thank you for listening. This was The Detroit Way.